said, stick by me, you'll be your guiding hand. But don't ask me what I think of you, I might not give the answer that you want me to.
Howdy, I'm Joe, and this is my show, Joe's Rides. In these videos, myself and my glamorous assistant Caden will show you what we get up to at my workshops in town, repairing mostly Land Rovers, along with a few classic cars, American cars, hot rods, all sorts. We'll also do some videos from my workshops here at home, where you can see some of my projects, bikes, more cars, American cars, hot rods, odds and sods, you name it. So, if you like petrol, oil, beer, grime, dirt, then tune in. If you're a bit woke, left wing, believe in climate change, or you're a vegan, then fuck off! Okay, so we're thinking about the fuel system now on Supervan 3. So I've gone and got myself a fuel pump. This is a rip-off, a copy of a Bosch 070, I think was what they were known as. Might bite myself in the arse by buying a copy of one and not a real one. Time will tell, I suppose. This give or take makes about 3 bar of pressure, which should suit the Cosworth engine. That should be about right for that. And then many years ago, someone gave me a huge box of fuel filters. Must be 30 or 40 fuel filters in a box, which I've never had cause to use. They're Bosch filters, and I looked up the part number and actually suit a Porsche 911 of all things. I've put a few on eBay here and there, but I don't seem to go, so I never threw them away, and I'm glad I didn't, because now I can use them. They did come with these conical fittings for fuel hose. I don't have the male parts of those to suit those, so I've managed to go online and find some 8mm hose tail barb type fittings. Quite a strange thread. I think they're N12 by 1.75, so weren't the easiest thing to find. I mean, they're out there, but yeah, it took a bit of looking for. So we've got them on there. We've got some little aluminium washers. We'll put some PTFE tape on there, get those tightened up, and that will be the fuel filter we're going to use. As far as underneath the bonnet, it looks to be fairly simple. So down here we've got our 2 fuel pipes that feed the engine. I've established that the rearmost one is the delivery one, and the other obviously is the return. I think these discs are kind of like non-return valves, I think, to stop the fuel running back, from what I can gather. So we'll retain those. Obviously they should be there. They're there for a reason. And then we'll lift the van up in the air in a second, and show you what we're going to do underneath. Okay, so something we have already mentioned, but as we're on the fuel system side of things, I'll just tell you again. So Caden and I, we took the tank down some time ago, cleaned it all out, and while we had it out, we took the opportunity to fit a fuel return line in. So the van originally had a Pinto engine in it, and unlike a diesel or a fuel injected engine, didn't have the means of a return. So we've already future proofed it and put our return pipe in before we put the tank back up. This is the original fuel line that was on the van. This is going to be our delivery line to the Cosworth engine through our pump. So we're quite fortunate in that up here we've got quite a few nooks and crannies and places that lend themselves to mounting this pump, and also our fuel filter. So I'm going to fit the fuel filter before the pump. Some vehicles have them after the pump, but it makes sense in my head to have the filter before the pump. So not only does it protect the injectors and the fuel system, but it protects the pump itself as well. So we'll look at making some brackets to put this fuel filter and then this pump probably up in these areas up here. Connect them up to that aforementioned delivery pipe that runs underneath the inlet manifold, and then our return pipe will then come along and meet onto the one that we've already fitted. So we'll get on with that. I'm quite looking forward to doing that. fairly easy job, no head scratching for a change, and we'll show you that when we've done it. So Caden's just knocked up a little clamp out of aluminium which we'll use to bolt this fuel filter up onto one of the chassis cross members, and I've just devised this. So I've put a rubber strap around the fuel pump, and I'm going to use an exhaust clamp which I've welded to a stainless steel, it's got copper slip on it, 10mm bolt, which is going to screw up into an existing hole in the chassis with a captive nut that's already up there, which held up one of the previous cross members, I think. So yeah, we'll get these bolted up now. One little issue on the fuel side of this, not a big issue but it is one, is the existing fuel lines on the Transit are 8mm fuel lines, and I'm going to be using 8mm fuel line as well, but the high pressure pump has a bigger inlet stub on it which I measured to be at about 12mm. So I've got to get a bit of 8mm pipe from the fuel filter onto a 12mm stub on the fuel pump. So I've got myself a length of 12mm internal diameter fuel pipe, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this 8mm piece of metal tube, stuff that up a piece of 8mm internal diameter fuel pipe, and then stuff that up inside the 12mm fuel pipe. And the idea of this 8mm steel pipe insert inside there is then when I push this up in there, it'll be up in there like that, I can put some hose clamps on there, Jubilee clips, and bang them up really tight with no fear of collapsing this on the inside, so we know we won't constrict the flow of fuel. So that's the next job, and that'll get us around that problem. So we haven't done a lot on Supervan for you today. Caden and I have been messing around with some of the other cars, but was determined to get the fuel side of the project done today, which it is, apart from just very quickly connecting these pipes up to the engine itself, which will only take me 10 or 20 minutes just to make each of those. So there we go, we've got our original Transit fuel delivery pipe into my Porsche 911 fuel filter. Out of there we're going into this from 8mm up to 12mm internal diameter pipe into our high pressure pump, and then off up into the engine, and this is our return line. So it's all up there, it's all clipped up, and like I say, we've just got to connect those, literally just those two pipes up to the engine now. So we're going to call it a day now. As I may have mentioned earlier, we've got a hot rod show barbecue at a pub tonight. So I think it's getting near time to have a shower and call it a day, and we'll go and have a play. All right. Well, it's that time of the video where we have a look in this week's magical mystery box. We've had a lot of correspondence from you over the last week or so about what's in this week's magical mystery box. There's been, I think it was 47,000 emails this week, and the mailbag's full again, thousands. We just haven't been able to reply to all of them, unfortunately. But those of you who know will know that you can't know what's in the magical mystery box until it's revealed. So, continuing on the theme of drugs, this week I went looking for some weed. I've heard weed is quite good fun, a recreational drug. So I went round some of the pubs and clubs in town asking to get some weed, and I couldn't get any. And it wasn't until I sort of got home I thought, why am I out trying to buy weed? There's some in my garden. So I had a look this morning, and believe it or not, sure enough, there is. And here I found this stinging nettle leaf, which is a weed. And this is a leaf off some brambles, which is a weed. So I'm not really sure why people go paying good money for weed when you can just get weed in your garden. So I think you kind of crush it all up like so. Imagine it's meant to get you really high, and then you need some Rizzlers. I'm going to put some in the Rizzler there. Stinging nettle's a little bit tingly on the old fingers, Hope it's not that way on my throat. And we'll roll it up. And I think that's what you call a joint. I'm not sure about this thing about following your dreams. I think I'm just going to catch up with them later, man. Well, it's Saturday morning and Caden and I are here at my house playing around with some cars. We're off to a hot rod meet tonight at a pub not too far away. They've got a barbecue going. Should be a good event. And the weather's meant to, it's a little bit overcast now. It's nice and warm. And it's going to be nice and sunny later on this afternoon. So looking forward to that. So got the f100 out. I think we'll take that tonight. And we thought we'd make the opportunity to make a video on it. So this is a 1956 Ford F100 pickup truck, obviously. I built this, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago now. Time flies. When I got this truck, it was a bare shell. Can't stress that enough, just a bare shell. So there was no chassis, there was no engine, no gearbox, no axles, no running gear, no prop shaft, nothing, just a bare shell. And I bought it off a mate who got it off another mate. And the first mate who had it, he'd taken the body off to put a different body on a chassis for some very wealthy guy who didn't deem this body good enough. So this becomes sort of surplus, and yeah, mate of mine bought it. He didn't really know what to do with it. He was making noises about cutting the front off it and making it into a barbecue. And that's at that point I thought, no, I've got to save this. So I bought it and I got it home, and then I sort of thought, God, what have I done? You know, this really is a big undertaking. But the body itself, I mean, there was a few repairs I had to do, but it was really solid, so it was well worth doing something with. So the first thing I did is I responded to an advert for a 1975 Ford F150 pickup truck, which was a rotten wreck. So I went and bought that, and that gave me the chassis and the axles, the running gear, etc., to put underneath this truck. It wasn't plain sailing really. First major hurdle was the F150 was a long bed, so the wheelbase was longer. So I cut the chassis in half and welded it back together, obviously with some flitch plates, to make it the correct wheelbase. In actual fact, I can't remember what wheelbase I cut it to now. I've got a feeling it might be, it's possibly 110, but that's, yeah, it's a long time ago, I can't remember. But when you do look at some 56 F100s, quite often from the factory, the front wheel doesn't sit central in the front wheel arch. It looks a bit funny. So when I decided to cut the chassis, I made it so the front wheel sits in the middle of the front wheel arch. I think it gives it a better appearance. The chassis itself on the F150, the arse end of it was rotten, so I had to repair all that. But it lent itself because it gave me all this running gear. It's I-beam front suspension. The truck doesn't drive like a truck really. It rolls really nice. It's quite smooth up the road. It's almost car-like from that respect. It's got a Ford 9-inch rear, which I very recently, only this year, changed the ratio on. For ages, I've been a little bit, it's been bugging me that the ratio has been too low. Obviously being a truck, it wouldn't have a high ratio rear end. And I bought a crown wheel and pinion somewhere. I can't remember the exact ratio, but it was about 3:5 to 1. I could be wrong, but roughly around that, which is a sort of run-of-the-mill ratio for a Cardiff. And I took the crown wheel and pinion out this year, only to find that the one that I bought was exactly the same. So it already had that ratio in there. So it didn't give me a lot of options. The next lowest, I think, is a 271, which I managed to get from Hauser Racing. He had one and that's what it's got now, and it's made it a lot more drivable and much better on fuel. I mean, it's not the sort of car that you worry too much about fuel consumption, but last year when me and my mate went to the NSRA Fun on the Beach, had a long run out there, and tell that the fuel consumption was better, and it's just made it a nicer truck to drive on long distances. It's not buzzing and revving quite so much. So yeah, there was a fair bit of work went underneath the truck, and obviously there was a lot of work on the body of the truck. One of the things was welded up the front wings. Front wings are welded to the bonnet and then cut here to make a one-piece flip front. I'll show you how that works in a minute. So effectively I can open the front of this up, push it forward, and I can get all around the engine for maintenance. Did you want to have a look inside, Caden? So inside's quite a nice place to be. This truck, when I got it in its shell form, was yellow, and this seat itself was a bright yellow, which I couldn't live with. I knew the truck was going to be black, so I wasn't sure whether I'd need to get it recovered. That's not something I'm really into, upholstery. But I did thought I'd give it a try. I got some vinyl spray, vinyl coat, I think VHT, I think do it, some black VHT spray, and sprayed it. And bearing in mind that was 6 or 7 years ago, it stayed on there. It's brilliant stuff. You wouldn't know that this seat was yellow. The yellow bit of the van reminds me that when I, not long after I first finished it, when the NSRA had their Super Nats at Billinacrodrome, I was camped up there, and I was having a few beers, and a guy who'd had more beers than me came and talked to me, and he says, I recognise the registration of your truck. And I started telling him the story that I'm telling you. Well, I just got it as a shell, rah, rah, rah. And then he said, yeah, he says, I know now. He said, was it yellow? And I said, yeah, it was. He said, oh, that truck used to belong to Emma Parker Bowles, Camilla Parker Bowles' daughter. Because he'd been drinking a lot, and I'd had a drink as well, I sort of took this with a pinch of salt. I thought, no way. But the next day, I did some Googling, and it took me a long time to find a picture, but I did find a picture of Emma Parker Bowles with this truck in its former guise. I'm not sure what engine it had then, or what chassis or whatever. I guess it was the standard show. I don't know. I didn't know the truck then, but it transpired that that was true, and you'll see a picture of that on this video with Emma standing on the running board of her truck, which was this truck. So inside, you may see that I've cut all the gearbox, the bulkhead out, sorry, and had to make this this box effectively. That's because I've got a big engine in here. I've got a 460 Ford engine, and it didn't fit by a long way. It actually comes into inside the car here. It didn't give a lot of room, and the pedals are all there quite close together. That's a Land Rover Discovery pedal box. That's a Land Rover Defender accelerator pedal, and Discovery 1 brake and clutch pedals all chopped up and made to fit. The gearbox is an MP 435, new process 435, it's 4-speed manual, so it gets on with that quite well. I'm quite fastidious about everything working, which it does, so I had the speedo calibrated to suit the MP 435 gearbox, so the speedo works and reads correctly, and all the gauges and everything work as they should, which I'm pleased about. So as I said, the front, the bonnet, the wings have all been welded together to make a one-piece flip front. Obviously that's on a hinge, but I've also put it on some sliders. So effectively I can flip this front, and then I can push the whole front of the car if I want to about a foot forward, so you can get right round everything. For now I just flip it and pull it back a little bit, but it does lend itself for good access. So here's our power plant. It's a 460 Ford V8. For you English people, or for us English people, that's 7.5 litres, so it's 7.5 litre, 460 cubic inch. bags and bags of torque. So when I bought the F150 donor car to put underneath here, it had a Ford 390 FE, which is about 6.5 litre. And at this stage, although I've been around cars all my life, I wasn't well up on the American Ford V8 family of engines. I knew quite a lot about them, but not everything. I don't claim to now. So this F150, which I bought as a donor, that had been sat under a tree forever. But I got it in the shed here, and it didn't take me long to get the engine that was in it running, and it seemed to run quite well. It was smoky, but it didn't have any mechanical noises. Anyway, that was the idea, was to go with that. And then my favourite bad trick of finishing up for the day and going inside and drinking wine and looking on eBay, I saw this Ford 460 engine for sale. It's quite a way away. It was down Kempton, I think. So I phoned the guy, and he said, yeah, come and get it. So I went down there. He was going to put it in a AC Cobra lookalike, a fake snake, but he deemed it too big and heavy. I think he went for a 351 in the end. So I had it, and I brought it back here, and I was craning it off the back of my Land Rover pickup to put it in the shed, and the chassis, which is underneath this, was just sitting in the shed at the time. And as I was lifting it out of the back of my Land Rover with the crane, I was looking at the gearbox on the F150 chassis, and immediately I saw that the stud pattern on the gearbox was different configuration to the one on the back of here. So my life came crashing down. So what I didn't realise at the time, really, and now I do know, is how many different variants there are in the Ford V8 family. So there's small block and big block and FE and so on and so on, and they're not all the same, particularly as you think they might be. So one of the biggest hurdles in this project was to get this engine to fit onto the MP435 gearbox, which was put in to take the 390, which is a different configuration on the back. And I literally searched for months, every night on the bloody internet and on Google and eBay and Craigslist and you name it, trying to find a bell housing or an adapter to make this engine to that gearbox, and just drawing blanks all the time. Even the big companies like Summit, etc., who do all these adapter plates, no one did a 460 to a MP435 gearbox, and I was nearly really ready to resign myself to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to either use this engine or B, that gearbox. And then again one night, trawling eBay, and I saw on eBay America, because I was going on eBay America as well, what I thought was the Holy Grail. And I messaged the guy and I said, is this what I'm seeing? Am I seeing a bell housing for an MP435 that will take a 460 big block Ford? And he replied, he was very helpful. He replied, yes. He says it's a really rare thing. He said they put a 460 Ford onto that particular gearbox in a mid-80s Bronco. He said there wasn't very many of them, but that is what you want. So I had that shipped over, and brilliant, that solved that problem. And that was a real big problem for a long time. It wasn't really holding me up because I had all the work to do on the chassis and the running gear and the body, etc., etc. But I really wanted to fit this engine. This engine, like nearly all of the engines I've got for my projects, I fired it up on the floor. It ran fairly well, but it was my intention to take it apart anyway. And just as well I did, because it was like clinging on to life. The strainer was, the oil strainer in the sump was just about blocked. Had some broken rings. The shells and bearings were all down onto the copper. So yeah, it wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes had I just put it in and cleaned it up. And so it was. Was you coming up, Caden, when I was doing this? I don't think you was you? No, it was the next engine you helped me build. I was going to say Caden had quite a lot of hands in doing this engine, but that was the Cadillac engine in the Transit actually. So I'm getting mixed up. So yeah, this was. I went completely through it. New shells, big ends, mains, piston rings. Everything cleaned, took all the valves out, valve guides where needed, etc., etc. New water pump, we've got a Elderbrook aluminium inlet manifold, 4-barrel Holly 750 CFM from memory, electronic ignition, Holly alloy valve covers, as much alloy as I could because it's such a heavy engine. And yeah, it kind of fitted in there, but as I said earlier, it didn't clear the bulkhead by a country mile, so we had to cut this huge hole into the bulkhead and box that back in. But yeah, it kind of looks okay. Obligatory aluminium radiator with twin cooling fans. This engine doesn't suffer overheating at all at any time. If I've got my caravan on it in a heat wave, it keeps it cool. The fans very rarely cut in actually. I ditched the timing chain and I put timing gears in there. Why did I do that? Well, someone had some for sale locally. And unlike a chain, they're never going to stretch. I mean, they really are sort of fit and forget. So it's got timing gears in there. So when you hear this engine, I don't know if you heard it when I just turned it off, but it's got a whine to it. That whine's not a problem. That's just those straight cut gears making their music. What else can I tell you? So we've got a Land Rover Discovery 1 brake servo and brake master cylinder. There's no way in the world I could have used original 56 f100 pedals, etc. I didn't have any because, as I say, when I got this, it was just a shell, and B, they operate through the floor from memory, so that wasn't going to happen. We've got a automatic fire extinguisher up here. Obviously, I hope nothing will ever cause a need for that to go off. I'll just come around this side. See if there's got my vintage Ford washer bottle there, and a nice vintage horn, which makes a pleasant noise. We've got a fuel pressure regulator here to do, as it says on the tin, to regulate the fuel pressure. And yeah, touch wood, to this day it runs really good. So I'll bang this back down and then we'll talk about some other bits of it. So I've got the stance of the truck pretty much how I want it, slightly high at the back, lower at the front. That's how I like it. A lot of people drop them in the weeds, don't they? Some people jack them right up in the air and everything in between, but I got it how I like it. When I first put this body on the F150 chassis, it was all over the place actually. It was massively low at the front and hugely high at the rear. So it transpired that the standard coil springs on the front had sagged over the years since 1975. So I renewed the coil springs on the front, and that brought it up an inch or two. And then on the rear, the F150, as I said, was a long bed, so it was designed for carrying a fair bit of weight. So I took a couple of leaves out of the rear springs, and that dropped the back end down to where it is now, which I'm happy with. Obviously, the 56 truck didn't have disc brakes on the front, but the F150 chassis that I used, that has got discs, so the brakes are pretty good. The rear brakes were a nightmare. So the F150 truck that I bought as the donor to put underneath there, I kid you not, literally had a tree growing up through the bed in the back. It had sat for 20 years, I think the guy told me, which was of no concern to me because I just wanted the running gear out of it. But over that time of all the years sitting, the rear brakes had all seized up and rusted to the drums, etc. So on the day that I went to pick up said truck, the F150, the guy rang me and stalled me and said, "Oh, you're going to have to give me a bit of time." He says, "I can't even pull it with a tractor. The rear wheels are lock solid because all the brakes had rusted up." So what he did is he managed to bash the drums off and then just took all the brake shoes and hardware, everything out of the rear brakes, and just threw it in the cab. And anyone who's had anything to do with rear drum brakes on old American cars will know where I'm coming from. But there's loads and loads of springs and adjusters, and they're normally very sort of complicated for what they are. They work okay. So he threw everything in the back, just leaving leaving the stub axle and the drum. So I had to figure all that out, how that all went back together, which was a head scratcher to say the least. And obviously I fitted new shoes and cylinders when I did that. So I just got steel wheels. I'm not a massive wheel fan. I don't like these massive alloys with thin tyres that people put on trucks and cars, but that's just my personal preference. We're all different. I kind of would like a set of Krager 5 spokes. They're ones that I would go for. I bought some recently. Really nice set of wheels and tyres, quite wide on the back. They would have suited the truck well. They transpired to be a different Ford PCD. The truck PCD is slightly different to the car PCD. So I then went searching in some adapters, and the adapters that I could find I think were just under an inch wide, which unfortunately made the wheels and tyres stick out of the outside of the wheel arches. It wouldn't have looked right. So unfortunately, although they were a beautiful set of wheels, I couldn't get them to fit and let them go. So I'm happy with these for now, but if some Kragers pop up one day, then perhaps they'll be a go. The back is pretty standard really. The truck body, when I got it, didn't have a floor or sides, but I've made these sides up, and this is a kit that you just a generic kit for truck beds that you buy. A couple of old petrol cans here. This one has the lid hinge. This is for my tools, and the other one's for petrol. And needless to say, the fridge is for beer. And that's about it really. So from the outside, it has the appearance of a fairly stock 56 Ford F100 truck, but underneath it's quite radically different. And I'd like to think there's not another one out there. I may be wrong, but yeah, it's been a labour of love, but it's a good, reliable truck now. Have a lot of fun in it, and gets a lot of attention, which is good as well. There you go. Now we've arrived at the Farmer's Boy in Kensworth for the hot rod do, and I've just hooked up with Disco Dave for a beer, and Disco Dave tonight has bought a fire engine, and why not? Man as a child.
I think I was more excited than he was.
Where's Milner?
I've been out doing it.
Yeah. So at 90 degrees, drop down. So if you do something, the top shot. Well, that's a good combine I've got there from the Chevy car. He reckons if I want a disc conversion kit for the Mustang. And he said I'll just give it a shot. How's the garage? Yeah, cool.
Oh, hello. Remember, like and subscribe.